As you learn about the narcissistic pattern, it's also wise to reflect on the much healthier alternatives. Now, below you're going to find a link to my new extensive course called Ready, Set, Connect. It addresses both the mindset and the skills involved in gratifying relationships, and I hope you'll find it to be quite therapeutic. We each have different roles that we play in our lives, and of course, the core character that we carry on the inside informs the way that we live into those roles. Today, I want to talk with you about the role of parent, and especially the role of the parent whose core character is defined by their narcissism. One of the reasons it's so important for us to understand what's going on with these individuals is that if you grew up in a narcissistic home, or perhaps if you're a parent that may have those characteristics even now, the impact of the narcissistic behavior can be so strong and so long-lasting. It's important for us to recognize narcissists begin with a mindset of control. They're highly selfish and competitive. One of the things that they do is they actually think of a child's separateness and distinction as being threatening against them. They're highly agenda-driven, and as far as they're concerned, the child exists to serve their needs and their interests. So that's not a good starting point. So what I want to do, and I have a lot of information I want to share with you here today, is I'm going to go through a 15-point checklist that you can look for that says if a parent is in fact operating with that narcissistic pattern. And by the way, we're going to have an article that goes along with that. You may have to look at that and reference when you get through, because I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. But let's get right to it, and I want to see if you can just kind of get a gauge about whether you were indeed brought up with strongly narcissistic parenting. Now, number one on our checklist is narcissistic parents will have a maximum of telling and a minimum of discussion. In other words, let me explain to you how things are supposed to be, and this is especially true in moments of differentness and conflict. Number two, that parent will remind the child about the chain of command and remind them quite frequently. In other words, to that narcissistic parent, authority and dominance is most essential to them. Number three, there's a strong inconsistency between the private and the public persona. With narcissistic parents, image is everything. They want you to look good and they want themselves to look good, but then when you're behind the scenes with them, it's a whole different story. Number four, discipline is not really discipline. Do you know the meaning of the word discipline in its classic sense? It simply means to teach. And when a narcissistic parent disciplines, there's not teaching going on. It's just pounding that person into submission. And if the child learns anything, they learn to suppress. They learn to go underground. They learn to keep secrets, because it's like, if I share who I am, it's not going to work out well for me at all. Number five, the narcissistic parent may make manipulative use of reward and punishment. Now, I understand that whenever parents want to teach their kids something, they can say, well, here's the reward you're going to get, here's the punishment you might get, or the consequence you're going to have. But that's what we're talking about with narcissistic parents goes way beyond that. It has a threatening approach. If you don't do A, then you're going to get B, and it's going to be miserable for you. Or if you do this, and they're almost in an enticing salesman pitch, then I'm going to give you this. And there's a real strong sense that says one way or another, you're going to do what I want. And we go back to that teaching. It's not about teaching. It's about manipulation and keeping you in line. Number six, these narcissistic parents can be erratic in their moods, and they can be set off emotionally over trivia and over your sense of separateness. And you're thinking, what did I say? What did I do? And many times, kids who grew up in narcissistic families will say, there was this walking on eggshells feeling that I had, and it was pervasive. Number 7, and this is an interesting one, and that is when the child is immature or edgy, the narcissistic parent is even more so. Okay. In other words, if the child yells or screams or says something off base, the parent can come back and do the exact same, only worse. And the implication is there's a strong codependent nature that parent brings, and the parent is actually looking for supply. And because of their lack of a strong interior base to draw upon, when the kid doesn't go along with what they say, if you get moody, I'm going to get double moody. If you have upset feelings, then I'm going to be even more upset. And that's how they think. That's how they operate. Number 8 on our checklist is that narcissistic parent will turn the child's separateness or distinction into a referendum about themselves. For example, why are you doing this to me? Don't you know that this is going to make me look bad, and I've taught you better than this? I recall a man who was in his 40s, and his own father was saying, I thought I brought you better up than this, and would just use that kind of thing against him, much less who knows what he was spoken to when he was 9 years old. But it's all about the parent. What you do is a referendum on them. Number 9 on our checklist, and that is that narcissistic parent may not be available in critical moments, whether it's physically they're just not available and they don't show up, or emotionally they're not available. Let's say something very difficult has happened, or the child is really struggling with something. They know, well, I don't know where my parent is, but they're not going to be able to talk with me about it. And so that there's a certain kind of neglect that can be a part of that. Now, number 10, and you may be surprised that we waited all the way to number 10 for this one to come up, but number 10, criticism is the norm. Now, when I say criticism, it can come in so many different ways. It can be unsolicited advice. It can be lots of second guessing. It can be shown in the fact that parent is hardly ever pleased. It can come in the form of verbal abuse, where there's just a lot of degradation of that child's character. Criticism is just one of those constants, and it's just right around the corner. You know it's going to happen. You may not know exactly when. Now that leads directly to number 11 on our list, and that is when anger is experienced by that parent. It's abrupt. It's harsh. It's demeaning. Now, many times it's very openly aggressive, and then sometimes it's passively aggressive. And I'm going to get to that in just a moment. But basically, the narcissistic parent, when they're angry, rather than just thinking, well, I need to redirect your behavior, it's like, no, it's character assassination. There's a lot of blame and shame and guilt induction. I'll give you something to complain about. I'll give you something to cry about. The anger is irrational, it's erratic, and it's very condescending. Number 12 on our list. The narcissistic parent will expect apologies from the child, but then they don't give apologies themselves, because you see that's part of the power differential. They don't validate your hurt emotions, but you better validate their hurt emotions. Then number 13, and this is where we go into the passive aggressive. There are all sorts of unfulfilled promises, and then we can say, and many other passive aggressive tendencies, lack of follow through on things that have been said, forgetfulness, or just not reliable in general. How many times has one kid said to another, well, you know how my mom is, or you know how my dad is. If they say something, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen that way. Number 14, there is a sense of, there's a requirement for dutiful and obligatory loyalty. Now, of course, loyalty is a good thing, but the narcissistic parent says, I demand it. And they may threaten it, or they may try to buy it, but nonetheless, they require your loyalty, no questions allowed. And then number 15, there can be lots of stonewalling or the silent treatment or withdrawal of affection when that child simply does not come through. Now, there are multiple other things that I could mention that would be a part of narcissistic parenting. When we talk about things like sexual abuse, how can a parent possibly do that? But it happens. We can talk about religious abuse, financial abuse, playing favorites inside of the family. There are many other possibilities. And so this list is not necessarily exhaustive, but I think you get an idea of what I'm talking about. Now, when a person's, 7 years old or 10 years old, they may not have a whole lot of recourse when the narcissist comes along with all these characteristics. But particularly as you age and you're in your adult years and you gain your adult independence, it can be so necessary for you to learn how to be distinct from that narcissist. You don't want to be the next person in line that says, well, this is what was done to me, and I'm going to pass it along to the generation right behind me. And so many people do that, and you don't want to be the one that does that. Sometimes, as you're an adult, it may be necessary for you to have some straight talk with that parent. You don't have to be mean. Notice your tone of voice. You can say what you need to say, and you can do it in a calm but firm kind of way, and more or less imply, I don't think like you, and I probably won't be thinking like you. You need to understand that I disagree with some of the things that you've emphasized, and that's where I am. In addition, you want to go ahead and live independently. When you know that you have reasonableness and wisdom on your side, stand in your independence. And if that narcissistic person wrongly characterizes your behaviors, so be it. Stand in your independence anyway. And then sometimes without triangulating, and by that I mean playing one person off of another, sometimes you may need to let other individuals know, I'm thinking differently, I'm going to act differently. So if you notice it, notice that it's deliberate. Bottom line is, narcissistic parents, like I say, they want to make you into a version of what they need, and your independence is actually a threat to them. The best thing that you can do when you know that you've lived with this pattern in your personal history is to decide, in those adult years especially, I'm going to define myself. I'll take in information from all sorts of people and resources, but ultimately, this is my life. And when somebody has come toward me with some things that are just not balanced, I'm going to recognize that. I'm going into a different direction. That's the best way you can respond when you know that there have been these patterns that have been perpetuated in your personal history. Now, I hope that videos like this give you some good food for thought and can help you with your awareness of what's been going on in your world. If you've not already subscribed to this channel, I would encourage you to do so. Gus and I are going to keep more videos coming toward you. Sometimes you need help in unpacking this, and you know that I'm a proponent of therapy, and we have the BetterHelp, the people at BetterHelp.com that can assist you. They've been sponsoring me now for several years. I've received good feedback, and I know that it's accessible. It's something that you can do online or even on the phone. It's affordable, and so please, if you have a need for that, then please go through the link that we have provided below. You get a 10% discount on the first month, so that's an incentive there as well. Likewise, I have my courses, my online classes, and these are very extensive. It's like signing up for a class, and each class has multiple videos with written documents and guided questions, ready, set, connect about how to have proper connection skills. This is me about establishing your boundaries, free to be finding yourself despite the controllers. We have my webinars that have already been produced, but they continue to be available for purchase. In addition, we have my podcast, our website with many articles, including the one regarding this video. We have my books, plenty of resources. I know it's difficult if you look back and you think, well, there was a whole lot of that narcissistic pattern that I didn't know at the time when I was growing up. But I'm hoping that as you're able to see it for what it is, like I say, you can be the one that says someone in this family tree needs to take it in a different direction. I volunteer for that. And in doing so, it gives you a sense of inner well-being, and hopefully you can continue down the path towards becoming a person of peace.